Hi, Sachsenhausen. Kolonia gwarna, parna, Germania richtig dicker Heil. Sachsenhausen. Wirtycie jak bambusik, trupie łebki to kaktusy heil. Es lebe Kulador Kampf.
Today's interview is with Anne-Caroline Bruns, the granddaughter of French resistance leader and Sachsenhausen concentration camp survivor Louis Mourot, who was captured and imprisoned by the Gestapo in September 1942 when he was only 17. He was transferred to Sachsenhausen in January of 1943, where he remained imprisoned through the end of the war when he was liberated by the Red Army. Anne-Caroline traveled from her current home in West Germany to meet with me in person at the Sachsenhausen Memorial. In this interview, Anne-Caroline shared the story of her grandfather and reflected on how his experience shaped her and her family members' lives as descendants. Here we are in Tower A in our Descendant Stuff podcast studio at Sachsenhausen Memorial. I am here with a descendant who traveled to meet me here. Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, good morning. I'm Anne-Caroline Bruns. I'm French, living in Germany for already 13 years. And my grandfather was a deportee here in Sachsenhausen.
What was his name?
His name was Louis Mourot. He was born in 1923 and died in 2016, so nearly 93 years old. And I was already 35 years old, so that I was able also to discuss with him about what happened.
So you grew up with him, basically.
Yes.
Okay. Do you know anything about his life before Sachsenhausen?
Yes, yeah. He grew up in a French family. His father had been injured in the First World War. He was gassed, and his mother was a nurse on the front. He was the oldest son of a family with 3 brothers and sisters. They used to live in Nancy in Lorraine, a region directly concerned from the conflict between France and Germany. And he was 17 years old as the war started. And in Nancy, he could directly see a lot of refugees impacted from this war, and he decided to create a resistance movement. Very early, so very young, very early in the war.
Do you know, growing up, what his personality was like?
He has a very strong personality. He was a Boy Scout, Catholic, full of ideal, with a high sense of duty, honor, dignity. And from his mum, he has already inherited a very, very strong personality with pugnacity and uprightness, etc. This family comes also from Lorraine, I've said, and that's the origin of Jeanne d'Arc. She comes from there, and she participated in her time to free France from British invader in the 15th century. And it explains also why my grandfather was so patriotic.
So it might also explain why he wanted to create resistance movement.
Yes, probably also.
How old was he again at that time when he started his resistance work?
17 years old.
17 years old. Can you tell me a little about that?
Yeah, so he had just finished high school, wanted to become a Navy officer. Then it started with resistance. In May 1940, Germany invaded the north of France. Nancy was the red zone. So it means everything was streng verboten, so forbidden. He could see a lot of people fleeing, mostly Jewish families, but also militaries, etc. And he started with thinking about resistance with some friends. For him, it was really important to let us know that he had been a resistant from the beginning on. So no comparison with the communists jumping into this resistance much later in the war, and also not like the one who have turned their mind in the last months of the war, when it was clear what would happen. So for him, it was really important. For me, it's also leads the question, so what would I have done with the age of 17? Did politics play a role for me so early in my life? So that's really something interesting I just want to understand, and we have to know the context.
You talked a little about how he started it. Do you know anything about his resistance activities? Did he ever tell you about that?
So with 2 friends, they have contacted a gendarme friend because they knew they are too young to be credible from other guys. And they went to this gendarme in the name of general, but there was no general. My grandfather was a general with 17 years old. And they told him, okay, so we think you could help us and you also think like us. And it was the start of this resistance network, Défense de la Patrie, DP, Defense of the Fatherland. And they have skits, I would say, 4 targets: help fleeing people, collect abandoned weapons from the Blitzkrieg, small weeks of war with Germany, organize propaganda against Germany, and the 4th of them, recruiting and training of paramilitary groups. He told us he drove through the whole region with his bicycle in order to recruit further participants in the name of this general. So in this general, he was much too young to be trustworthy. And because of this night activities, it was necessary for him to find a cover along the day. And studying was not a good cover. That's why he came to a bank and contacted the director of the bank, the BNCI, now it's BNP. And he told him, so, I want to work for you, but perhaps I will not work so much, but I know your wife is a Jewish, and if something happened to your wife, I will help. And then he explained also to us that this director of the bank came to the wall. There was a picture of Pétain, and he just removed the picture of Pétain, and behind it was a picture of General de Gaulle. This director could really understand what my grandfather wanted to do. And then he started working in the bank as a very small co-worker, I would say. In the time they have met resistance, he has contributed to save more than 360 people. They have guided them to the free zone in the south of France. I was told Jewish fleeing people, escaped prisoners of war, parachutists, pilots whose planes had crashed, etc. They have also managed to connect their resistance network with other one, for example, the one in Lyon, which are really well known and started with this structure of resistance in France. I know that later my father tried to let my grandfather be recognized as Just of Nations, and he failed because they wanted witnesses and document providing all these activities about the people saved from this resistance network. And you can imagine it was not possible to document and really dangerous also to document in this time. So we did not manage to let him recognize, but it's really documented that in the number documented that we can say that they have saved a lot of people.
How did he come to be brought to Sachsenhausen? Because you are a descendant of Sachsenhausen, just like us. So obviously he was imprisoned here. What happened from the time he was 17 until he was brought to Sachsenhausen? How did he come here?
On September 22nd, in 1942, my grandfather has been arrested in the bank by the Gestapo. What happened, one of the guys in his resistance network was drunk and spoke too much in a bar in an evening or something like that. And then it was the start of a lot of arrests in this resistance network. My grandfather went first to the prison Charles III in Nancy, and he was tortured 3 days long. First day, he was put on a table, and they have beat his back very much. Then second day, more on the head, etc. So really hard days. And he explained to us also that the Gestapo took him to go to his bedroom at home and to look for documents and things like that. At this point of time, he had in his bedroom some elements or cross, etc. from his activities as a Boy Scout. And it was a misunderstanding with the Gestapo because scout could also be understood in English like spy. And then it was one of the elements he told us during this time with the Gestapo. He managed not to say anything that could have damaged his resistance network and also damage other people of this resistance network. I've heard in an oral record I have from him some information I did not remember by myself, and he explained also that several guys of this resistance network were put in the same room from the Gestapo, and they told the one, hey, he has told some name, he has given some name, so we want to know who is the general. And you can imagine that he would have never state who is the general because it would have been worse for him. Then, several weeks later, he was sent to the assembly camp in Compiègne in the north of France. It was a camp for prisoners waiting for destiny. In this camp, he was able to send some letters to his family, and so that we know some information what's happened there. And we know also that 3 times he was sent to Mont Valérien. It's near to Paris in a truck with other prisoners. And just before arrival, they decided who they would shoot. So he was one of the one who could have been shot, but it did not happen. And he told us also in this way, so I have survived already 3 times and I was not yet 18 years old. He had promised himself if he would have been in front of this fire squad, he would shout, Vive la France, long life to France. So that was really his ideal and his strong character. Then January 25th of 1943, he was sent to Sachsenhausen. On the way from Compiègne camp to the train station in Compiègne, French people came to the street, although it was really early in the morning, and they managed also to give some letters for the families. And then they embarked in the animal wagons, like we know what's happened for these concentration camps, and the travel took 3 days. I don't know so much about this experience in this train. He did not speak too much about it, but I've read some books speaking about that, and I can understand also why he did not speak so much about this time, because it was really, really difficult. And he told a bit about the arrival in Oranienburg. The local civilian spit on them, named them terrorists, etc. So it was really not a welcome committee, we can say. And the commandant of the camp told them, here you come in through this door, so we are just upstairs. This door where Arbeit macht frei is written, and you will quit through the chimney you can already see. And then they discovered the other undead prisoners who were there for a longer time.
So you grew up with him, you talked to him about his experiences. Did he ever talk about his, the day of arrival and what he experienced on that day?
He was really impressed about the letters written on the barrack around the Appel place. The way to freedom is with a lot of adjectives, I don't remember them. Yeah, he told us also that he got the number 57796. He got a red triangle on his striped pajamas, so his suit, and also the letter F for France.
He was here as a political prisoner.
Political prisoner, yeah.
Was the label that was put on him.
Exactly. So he told us also about the first activities while arrived. So they had to be decontaminated, and they were shaved, and they went to their barrack, and they had to organize everything. Then the SS came and was not happy about the way it was ordered, etc. So they got quick a view on what could happen, and then he was once more impressed about the first appel he had to make, because he discovered these undead prisoners staying there but not looking like alive anymore. So that was the first impression he explained to us. I can remember also that once my brother and I were for several days on holiday at my grandparents' home. We were teenagers and had time to discuss about this time. And my grandfather offered to show us his deported suit. He just wanted to go alone, to take it out of the box. And then as he went back, we could see that he had cried. So it was still very emotional for him, long years afterwards. And for me as a teenager, it was really impressive also to see which impact this can have on my grandfather, who was a very strong guy for me. He used to say also always to us as grandchildren, a man is strong, brave, never tired, never heal. So for me, it's the image I have from my grandfather, and seeing him having cried, it was really questioning also.
Well, how long was he here?
From January 43 to May 45. So more than 2 years.
More than 2 years. Do you know what kind of work or labor they had him perform?
So I know that at the beginning they quick went to Birkenau, near to Auschwitz, because they had there to plant the limit of this new camp. It was not yet created, and they went there, and they had to work there, and then they came back to Sachsenhausen. I cannot tell how long it took this time. He spoke to us that he was partly in this shoe commando working around here. He was in this Heinkel factory near to Sachsenhausen, and he had to build some motors for planes. He explained also that he was asked from the Gestapo, which is your profession, probably to be sorted out. And he was a student, so okay, you will be a mechanic. And that was the origin of his work in this Heinkel factory. He told us that he tried also with some comrades to organize some sabotage, but it was also really dangerous and they had to make it in a way that it was not visible. Otherwise, you can imagine what could happen.
What kind of sabotage?
Just not screwing enough the motors or things like that, I can imagine, but I do not know exactly. I've read also some books with witnesses from other deportees, but from him I do not know more than this point.
And you said he was on the shoe testing detail. Did he talk about that at all?
Yes, it was really, so the target was to test the shoes for the soldiers. They had each day new shoes, so and very hard leather. Here we see some stones, etc., but there were also some very different ground which you could have as a soldier, schlamm and things like that, so really difficult to go, and you had to go further and quick with a big rucksack. But it was more, I would say, not a job like in the factory, but the consequence if the SS were not happy, then you have to go there.
It's like as a punishment?
Yeah, punishment, you can say. He told also that in the first days he had also to see the torture of one of the guys who had stolen some rutabaga, and he had been bad a lot. He told us, I do not know if it's exactly this story, but he told also that if a prisoner has to be bad, then he had to count by himself the 25 beats. So that he told us also.
Going back to the shoe testing, do you know why he in particular was punished in that sort of way?
No.
No. Do you know if he had any illnesses while he was here in Sachsenhausen?
I know that he was very ill at the end. I do not know if he was in the Revier. I know that also in the late years in his life, he had a lot of health problems because of the beats he got from the Gestapo and from the SS here.
You mentioned, you know his prisoner number. Do you know what barrack he was in?
Yeah, 38. This was one of the one we can see today.
Okay. And do you know, so it was 1943 that he was taken here. Do you know if he was together with other political prisoners, or was it mixed with other prisoners at that time?
It was a group of French one. He explains that as they went to this barrack, the SS commander or soldier told them, so all the French, you are bad guys, and you know what we will do with you.
Do you know how many people were in the barrack with him?
No, I don't know.
Did he ever talk about the conditions and the living conditions in the barrack?
Yeah, there were at least 3 persons per bed, if we can tell it's bed. It was really difficult to get something to eat. Here, I must say, I cannot differentiate if I got information from him or from my visit here or from the books I've read. So it's difficult to differentiate currently. One point I've also here in mind, he told also us about this endless appel on this place, where they had to stay, and also the dead guys had to stay because the number had to be the right one. And one thing I know, and I can really remember from him, we went for a walk and it was cold in the winter, and he told us, oh, I show you how you can get warm. And it was really staying without any movement and just contracting all the muscles in regular intervals. And it was the way he learned here in Sachsenhausen on this Appelplatz. And he further used these methods afterwards and told us how to get warm in a cold winter. And my twin cousins, Hélène and Marie, told me also that about another exercise, the experience with him as they were on holiday. This exercise about contracting the muscle and clenching the fist was also part of the morning gym my grandfather did afterwards, and also with my cousins. He was with us on holiday, and so, yeah, you have to make this exercise. So still present in his life afterwards.
He was here for quite a long time. Do you know if anything about his experience here changed from the beginning towards the end of his imprisonment?
No, I cannot say. I can speak about the last months of the war afterwards. I know that they created, so you spoke about, was it a mixed group or French group, etc. I know that they created very, very strong friendships with the guys here. As I told to you, my grandfather was Boy Scout, Catholic, well engaged, more conservative, etc. But he had a very strong friendships also with communist guys, because they had to live exactly the same life and the same experience, and it only worked if you are together.
Do you know, in the very limited time that he would have that wasn't forced like not an SS force time, what he did with those friends? Were there any activities that he was engaged in? Would they just be in the barracks and kind of bonding, or how did he ever talk about those friendships and how they formed?
No, it's difficult to say, but I know that these friendships stayed afterwards, and they visited each other with their families. And my father say also that as he was a child or a teenager, and they went to visit one other prisoners, so former prisoners, they were directly welcomed as member of the family. So you are a descendant of deportees, we are deportees, so you are part of this. And it was one of the ways my father, as a teenager, discovered what happened with his father.
Okay.
He spoke also about the way they were organized in the barrack and for the work with the capo, so the group leaders, I would say. The SS had chosen within the groups to organize them. And my grandfather spoke really negatively about this capo. The whole story is that these capos had to convince the SS that they make the right job and they are severe enough. And then the deportees have really suffered a lot under these guys. What is interesting, after the death of my grandfather, I've got from my father a lot of archives, and one of these archives are the letters my grandfather wrote to his family during the time here. So very short letters. They had to be in German because there was some censure, and the boss here had to have a look on what he wrote, and we have also to know that he was forced to write that he's doing well, that he's healthy, etc., etc. And we know that it was not the case. And in these letters, it's interesting because he thanks his mother about what she sent, or he asked his mother or his family to send some socks, pulleys, or things like that. But we know also from him that he got the parcels, but he was never able to use or to eat something coming because the capos steal everything. So that's also one thing we know.
And how about the end times that he was here? So the months towards the end of the war. Can you talk a little bit about what happened then?
In the last months of the war, Berlin and Oranienburg were under pressure because of the Red Army coming. I don't know if it's the reason why, but my grandfather was sent with a group of prisoners in March 1945 to Ruhl-Schwarzheide. It's a satellite camp of Sachsenhausen. It's a city between Berlin and Dresden. There they have contributed to extract brown coal in order to transform it in a kind of fuel for vehicles of the German army. And this story I have learned in October 2010 because I used to work for BASF, a big German chemical company, and I had a business trip for my job to Schwarzheide. And as my grandfather heard that, he reacted directly, Roland Schwarzheide, I was there, I've worked there. It was for me really a surprise, I would say. And indeed, I discovered that the small town near to Schwarzheide site is named Roland. And I found a monument in memory of this episode on the parking of the BASF site today. So they worked there for several weeks, and then they went in from this death march in direction of Prague. He told us that he was very, very weak, and they were all very, very weak. They had nothing to eat. One of his very good friends died on this way, and he promised him to inform his family. And he did it. After he came back to France, and he went to the family of this guy and explained to this family where the guy died and where they can find his kappa. And this guy told him also, if you come back, tell them, so that they will never forget what happened. They were released on the 9th of May from the Czech partisans near to Prague. The SS disappeared suddenly, and the other soldiers came, from Czech. They were brought to an hospital and got some food, and several of the prisoners died because their body were no more able to eat so much. And for my grandfather, I know that a nurse helped him giving some charcoal and afterwards vodka. So it helped him to vomit. His digestive system was completely burnt, but that saved his life also. And he was 22 years old and weighed 32 kilograms. So it was definitely really, really weak.
Then what happened? So he survived. He survived the camp, his arrest, then the camp, then the death march. What came next for him in his life?
First, he had to travel back to France. And for that, when he was fit enough for this travel, the deportees were transferred to an airport, and it was planned that they come to the plane and come back to France. And it's also an important history for him. So they were there with their stripped clothes, they had nothing, no luggage, etc. And as they went to the airport, they saw a lot of STO workers running to the plane and taking all the seats. So these STO workers were the forced workers from France sent to Germany in order to get some war soldiers back. But they were not prisoners, so they were not so weak like the deportees, and they took all the seats, came back with a plane, and my grandfather had to come with other previous prisoners with a train, also the animal wagons, like on the way to Germany. He came in Nancy back, so his town, and had to find his family. And it was difficult because his family had moved in between. And then he remembered his mother had some friends working in a shop near to the station. And he went there and asked her, where is my family now? And one small story we know also that there were some people helping the former deportees to find the families. And he gave his name, so family Mourot. And okay, there is 2 family Mourot in this town. And the first one could not be, and the second one, he was told there is a young man and also a young lady in these families as children. And he said, no, my brother and my sister are very small. But in between they got older and they were bigger than he remembered. And he explained also to us that his brother was so happy to find him back that he ignited all the explosives that he had collected and stored in the garden. And all the windows in the quarters broke because he was so happy that the brother is back from deportation camp. So it was a happy end, I would say, in this way. Another important thing he told to us is he was unable to sleep in a bed for several weeks and months because in comparison to the beds they have had here, they were very, very hard. And for him, it was not possible to sleep in another. Yeah, so he slept on the floor several weeks. Important thing to be able to take a normal life again was that he discovered that his resistance network had been able to work up to the end of the war. And that made him very proud because he was the creator of this resistance network. And it was for him the reward of his silence during the torture from the Gestapo. Yeah. And in order to become fit again, he had to come to a clinic in the Pyrenees. And then he had to find a new normality, understand the new political situation, sociological situation. He mentioned also, like a lot of other prisoners, that nobody wanted to listen to the horrors they have experienced. They were not able to understand what's happened. So if they asked, but how were you able to wash your clothes? Then the deportees told, okay, so it does not make any sense to answer to such questions because they do not understand and do not want to understand what we have lived here. So it was not possible for them really to communicate. And that was one difficult part of this way back to life. And moreover, he told us also that he suffered from the shame that he has come back alive and that some of his friends had died over there. So it was also a difficult thing.
He survived, but of course, all those years had a tremendous impact on his life.
Exactly. Yeah.
Really changed the course of his entire life. Do you know if he applied for any kind of compensation or if he was eligible to?
It's an interesting question. It was a possibility for French resistance member and deportees to get some compensation, and he refused everything. So he was also suggested to come to a high school for politics in France, and he refused because he told, if I accept some free pass, then the SS will have won on me. So he did not want to get any shortcut to enter a studies, a school, etc. And also he did not want to get this money. He would have been allowed to get it. After some discussion, I know that during his life, he changed his mind and he put this money on a conto, but he never touched it. So it's an example of his very, very strong character and personality. I told at the beginning he wanted to become a Navy officer. With this bad health coming back from deportation, it was not possible. And then he promised himself, okay, I will become an officer in another branch. And as he was help from the bank during the first year of the resistance. He came back to the bank, worked very hard and rose in the hierarchy, and was at the end a regional director. And for him, it was more or less the equivalent an officer in the bank.
In the very same bank where he was arrested?
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. In your impression, what do you think the impression of his life at Sachsenhausen made on him in his future life? How did he carry that with him, former prisoner?
Yeah, I guess in general, his very strong personality was an help in this situation of deportation, because he was convinced he had made the right thing, his duty as a resistant, and he was arrested. And this very strong character helped him also in his career and in his family, etc. But I would say that at the very end of his life, as he went in a retirement home, he was also weak. Then it was for him very difficult because he did not have the strength anymore to be a strong guy. And he closed himself, he did not want to have contact anymore. And it was at this point of time perhaps a disadvantage to have this strong personality, but it had been such a big advantage in his whole life that I would say, okay, so.
You knew him. You talked to him about his story. Did he share his story with other members of the family? Was it something he talked about openly, or was it really, if you sat down with him to ask him questions, that he would answer them?
It's interesting because it was one of the questions we have talked a lot with my cousins, brothers, father, aunts. In a summary, we can say my grandfather talked when he had decided to talk. One example for that, as we were young adults with my cousins, a cousin of mine, Anne-Laure, decided to come for 1 week holidays with my grandparents in order to take time to listen to his story, to write it so that we can also get some details. And each day during these holidays together, my grandfather told her, "Oh, not today, tomorrow." And at the end of the week, they did not find any time to speak about it. But for example, there were moments where it was easier for him to speak about, for example, end of the lunch when we were together with the family. It was probably also a topic of, do I want to give so much details to my family about how I suffered? Perhaps it was easier to speak with unknown people. For example, he gave some witnesses in schools, and it was perhaps for him more easier in this way than, okay, let's sit together and explain to me. And it could create a lot of also, for him, if he spoke about this topic, then he had a very bad night afterwards, nightmares, etc. So it was really impacting in his life.
What are some of the things that you have either heard from him or discovered about him that have really impacted you the most as a descendant?
For me, the biggest impact is, do not forget what happened and do not repeat the failures of yesterday. So that means we have to learn from the past. How could it happen? Which pattern we should recognize in our present societies to be sure that we do not reproduce them. I read a lot about this time because I want also to understand what's happened, how it happened, and to be sure that we do not reproduce itself. Another point for me as a descendant is I question myself about my choices, my beliefs, as I was 17 years old. And also today as an adult, how robust are my internal strengths, my bravery, etc. And I'm not sure, or in another way, I'm sure I would not have been mature enough with 17 to start such a history, I would say. Yeah? So these are the main topics for me. In his audio record, he tells, I want you, young people, to never forget the lessons of history, and especially this history. And also, do not forget that freedom has to be earned. And that I find also interesting.
What questions do you still have about him and his experience?
Yeah, indeed, a lot of questions, because we do not know everything, but perhaps we also do not have to know everything. And so currently, I would say I know that my father got a lot of archives, and I'm really curious about what we will see what will we discover, and how we can organize it so that we all can have a look on these archives. That would be one point. Another topic also would be, I know that because of his engagement in the resistance. He became an agent of secret service afterwards in his life. And it could be also one topic to say, so what did it happen in this environment? Which type of action he had? Which type of responsibility? Yeah, also interesting to, and a fully open question, because as a service secret agent, you do not speak about what you do.
Right. And how has his story and experience affected you in your life and your family? Because also you mentioned like that your family is interested in this story, and that's different from a lot of descendants that we speak to. And even in my own experience, my family is interested in learning what I learn and hearing about what I've come across. But it sounds like this is more of a full family project of yours. You mentioned cousins, you mentioned your father. So if they're putting together archives and wanting to sit down and talk to him, obviously this had a big impact on your family.
We are proud about what happened with him. So I would say he's more or less a hero, a patriarch, and hero. And yeah, it's impacting us in the sense that he had this strong personality, and he tried to give us also some start in our lives to be strong also. Several of us indeed are interested in and want to go further with witnesses. So an aunt of mine, for example, speak a lot with pupils in schools. My father is engaged also for this concours of resistance in France. I guess that we more focus on this resistance part than on the deportation part. It's belong together, indeed. But we can probably more learn from this resistance part. We are all more or less involved in a different level. And I recognize also some patterns. So I told that I read some books and watch some films, etc., read articles. Indeed, several of us told me, or we discussed together, that there are periods where we are really deeply involved in, and other periods where we say, hey, I have to live also in the present.
We're actually sitting right now in Tower A. This is the tower where the guards and the machine gun was that was meant to control the entire camp. If you turn around, you can see the barrack that he was in from where you sit. How does it make you feel to come back here?
So I was there once already in 2011. It's not an easy and happy travel, I would say. It's witness. It's also feeling a bit of what has happened here, because today you cannot show and understand completely what happened. But I think it's really important to be aware about what happened, indeed to be sure that we do not forget, because we can learn from the past for today and for the future.
This podcast is for and by descendants of Sachsenhausen. Are there questions that you have for other descendants that you would like to know? Any knowledge that you would want to gather from others that you haven't yet had from your own?
I've listened already several podcasts, and I found it really interesting, indeed, to be aware about the variety of the reasons why people came into such a concentration camp. And we used to speak a lot about Jewish people, and it was also a very specific situation for Jewish people. But indeed, if you listen to the podcasts which have already been published, there are a lot more of situation about asocial guys, or also resistance, or guys coming here without any reason, just because they were at the wrong place on the wrong time. So, and it's also something we have to be aware of, I guess.
And is there anything that you would want to share with other descendants?
I understand their stories and exchange about these stories. The start question, the beginning question is really, really good. These survivors or these deportees do not have any voice anymore, and which is our responsibility in not forgetting the past. And I like really much this idea to get to know each other, also to enlarge, because I told you that there are some trials in France along several generations to say, okay, what do you want to do now? What's your role? Do you have time to try something new? I guess it's easier to make it bigger and to have a very big understanding about who was there and what happened there. And if you only have a small view from one country, from only one origin of deportation, then you do not have the whole picture.
Thank you so much, first of all, for reaching out to us about sharing your story and for making this trip to come here and meet me here in person and spend some time getting to know one another. I thank you so much for your time and for sharing your story.
Thank you so much for your initiatives, because I guess you have a big responsibility in that. And thanks a lot for your time, for all what you have told to me. And we see each other. Bye-bye.
Sure. Yes. Bye. Descendant Stuff podcast is produced by Jakob Feistauer, Kelsey Snook, and Nicole Wines, 3 descendants of Sachsenhausen prisoners and co-creators of the Sachsenhausen Stuff project. The Descendant Stuff team would like to extend a special thank you to the team at Sachsenhausen Memorial and Museum, especially Dr. Astrid Lai and the members of the Educational Department's project, What Voice Do We Have?, as well as the Descendants Collective Voices of the Next Generation. The theme song, Heil Sachsenhausen, was written by Alexander Kulisiewicz while he was imprisoned at Sachsenhausen and performed by him after the war. It is used with permission from the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum's Kulisiewicz collection. If you are a Sachsenhausen descendant who would like to share your story, please contact us through our website at www.sachsenhausen-stuff.com or use the Contact Us link in the show notes below.
Heil Sachsenhausen. A jak będę jutro wzdychał lewą nóżką, ci zawtikam. Heil, es lebe Gold, o Kampf.